7. Ugly habits seniors should avoid as they age, but no one warns you about. Have you ever looked around and felt like life is quietly slipping past you? The phone doesn't ring as often. The house feels a little too quiet. Your steps are slower, and your body feels heavier than it used to. And somewhere deep inside you wonder, is this just what aging is supposed to feel like? But what if it's not just time that's pulling you away from life? What if it's the small, silent habits we fall into? The ones that seem harmless at first, but over time slowly take away our energy, our peace, and our connection to others. They creep in quietly. You don't choose them, but they stay. Until one day, you wake up and realize something feels missing. The truth is, aging doesn't have to mean fading. It can mean clarity, peace, and deeper connection if we're willing to look at the things we've been carrying and choose to let go. In this episode, Golden Wise Elders will walk you through 7 quiet habits that may be making your later years harder than they need to be. And more importantly, we'll explore how to gently change them, not through blame, but through awareness and a renewed sense of care for yourself and your life. Let's begin. There's a quiet kind of pride that comes from living a long, full life. You've worked hard, raised a family, overcome challenges most people wouldn't understand. You've earned your independence, so when your knees ache a little more than they used to, or the groceries feel heavier than they did last year, your first instinct is to say, I've got it, I'm fine. It sounds like strength. It feels like independence. But sometimes, the things that once served us well, like doing everything on our own, can slowly become habits that harm us without us even realizing it. At first, it's just skipping the handrail on the stairs. Then it's climbing up to reach the top shelf. Then one day, something slips, and you fall. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, falls are the #1 cause of injury in older adults in the United States. And many of them happen not because we're careless, but because we're trying to prove we're still capable, still strong, still the same. But it's not just our bodies that suffer. Over time, this quiet refusal to accept help begins to create invisible walls between us and the people we love. Our children hesitate to offer a hand, afraid we'll brush them off. Neighbors stop asking, friends stop insisting, and slowly, silently, we begin doing everything alone. Not because no one cares, but because we've unintentionally taught them to stay back. Frank knows what that feels like. He's 74, living in a quiet suburb just outside Columbus, Ohio. One morning last winter, snow fell overnight. Just a light layer, nothing dramatic. Frank grabbed his old metal shovel, the one he's had since the 1980s, and told himself, no need to call my son. I'll take care of it. 10 minutes later, he slipped on black ice near the sidewalk and fractured his hip. He spent 3 months in rehabilitation. When his daughter gently asked why he didn't call for help, Frank shrugged and said, I didn't want to bother anyone. That sentence stayed with her longer than the fall did, and eventually it stayed with Frank too. Now he lets his neighbors salt the driveway. He even texts his grandson when he needs help taking out the trash, not because he's weak, but because he's learned something powerful. Letting people help doesn't take anything away. It brings connection back. Dr. Amanda Lewis, a specialist in geriatric care, said it best. She said, accepting help builds bridges, not burdens. It's an act of trust and love. Even small gestures, like saying yes when someone offers to carry something, can open the door to meaningful connection. And she's right. Asking for help isn't a sign of weakness. It's wisdom. It's knowing that doing everything alone doesn't make you stronger. Sometimes it just makes you lonelier. There's no medal for suffering in silence, but there is strength in saying, yes, I could use a hand. So let me ask you something. Have you ever found yourself refusing help, even when deep down you knew you needed it? Not because you didn't want it, but because you didn't want to feel like a burden? Please let me know your answer in the comments. Take a moment. Let that question sit with you. Breathe. Be honest with yourself. You're not the only one who's felt that way, because often saying no to help is just the beginning. It's one of the ways we quietly begin to resist change, and sometimes, without realizing it, that resistance builds walls between us and the people we love most, which brings us to the next habit, one that might be keeping you from the very connection you're longing for. And if this moment helped you reflect, please consider liking this video, leaving a comment, or subscribing to Golden Wise Elders. Your journey matters, and we'd be honored to walk it with you. But what if that quiet no doesn't stop with help? What if it's part of a deeper pattern, one where we resist anything unfamiliar, even when it's exactly what we need to stay connected? There's something comforting about the familiar, the way your coffee tastes from that same chipped mug, the TV shows you've watched for decades, The routine that grounds your day. It makes sense. When life feels uncertain or fast moving, we hold tight to the things we've always known, the things that feel safe. But sometimes holding on too tightly can stop us from growing. And more importantly, it can quietly close the door on connection. Being resistant to change isn't always about stubbornness. Often it comes from fear. Fear of looking foolish, of not understanding, of feeling left behind. So we say things like, I don't need all that new stuff. Or, it's too late for me to learn. And slowly, without realizing it, we begin stepping back from the world around us. We stop exploring. We stop adapting. We start living in yesterday while the people we love are still moving forward. The impact isn't just practical. It's emotional. When we avoid learning how to text or refuse to use a video call, we miss out. Not just on technology, but on memories, moments, conversations we were never part of, not because we weren't loved, but because we chose not to show up in the way others now connect. A 2022 study from AARP found that older adults who engage with basic technology, things like messaging apps, photo sharing, even voice assistants, are over 40% more socially connected and mentally stimulated than those who don't. Not because the technology is magical, but because it's the bridge between generations, between updates and everyday joys. Let me tell you about Margaret. She's 69, living just outside Dallas, Texas. Her family has a group chat, one of those family threads where pictures, jokes, and updates get shared every day. But Margaret never joined it. Too complicated, she said, waving it off every time her daughter offered to help. At first it didn't bother her, but then she started hearing stories at dinner, things everyone already knew. Her granddaughter's piano recital, a birthday lunch she wasn't invited to simply because no one thought to call. The distance didn't come all at once. It came in little ways, like missed moments, until one night she said quietly, I feel like I'm the only one out of the loop. The truth is, Margaret didn't need to become a tech expert. She just needed to be willing, to try, to stay curious. As Dr. Stephen Nguyen, an expert in aging and cognitive health, says, you don't have to master technology. Just be open to learning. Curiosity is what keeps the mind young. And it's not just about gadgets. Resisting change shows up in small ways too. Refusing to adjust our routine when our bodies need rest, rejecting new perspectives from younger generations, or holding on to the idea that life used to be better instead of asking how it can still be meaningful now. Change will always be uncomfortable at first, but it's also how we stay alive, truly alive. It's how we say to the people around us, I may be older, but I'm still here. I still care. I still want to be part of this. So ask yourself, gently, what's one new thing you've been avoiding lately? Maybe it's learning to send a photo. Maybe it's using a voice assistant to call your grandson. Maybe it's something even smaller, like trying a new walking path or listening to a new artist your granddaughter loves. Whatever it is, you don't have to master it. You just have to be open. Because staying stuck in the good old days might feel safe, but stepping into something new is what reminds us we're still growing. And while we often resist the new, we also tend to hold tightly to something else, something even heavier. And while we often resist the new, sometimes what really weighs us down are the old things, the memories and emotions we haven't made peace with. Old memories, old wounds, emotional weight we've been carrying for far too long. Let's talk about that. Next, there's a weight some people carry that you can't see. It doesn't show up in the way they walk or move, but in the way they speak or don't. In the long pauses, the stories they avoid, the names they never mention anymore. It's the weight of holding on to something that hurt, a broken trust, a harsh word, a silence that lasted too long. Grudges often begin as protection. We tell ourselves we're setting boundaries, that we're standing up for ourselves. And sometimes we are. But when pain becomes a permanent part of our identity, when we replay old arguments like they happened yesterday, when we stay angry long after the other person has moved on, we're not protecting ourselves anymore. We're imprisoning ourselves in the past. And over time, it takes a toll, not just emotionally, but physically. Studies from Harvard Health show that long-term resentment is linked to high blood pressure, poor sleep, lowered immunity, and even increased risk of heart disease. The body remembers what the heart refuses to release. But the greatest cost of all? Connection, the ability to sit across from someone and be fully present, the openness it takes to laugh freely, to forgive, to trust again. Walter, a 71-year-old retired mechanic from Michigan, knows what that feels like. 12 years ago, he and his younger brother had a falling out over something that started small. a misunderstanding about their parents' will. Pride got in the way. Words were said, and from that moment on, they stopped speaking. Birthdays passed, holidays came and went, and each year Walter told himself, if he wants to fix it, he'll call. But the phone never rang. Last summer, Walter got a call, but it wasn't from his brother. It was his niece, telling him her father had passed suddenly in his sleep. Walter never got to say goodbye, and as he sat alone that evening, holding an old photo of the two of them fishing as kids, he whispered, I thought there would be more time. That's the thing about grudges. They always promise you more time, to fix it, to reach out, to forgive, but time doesn't always wait. Dr. Bay. Eliza Ramos, a psychologist specializing in late life emotional wellness, says this: forgiveness isn't about the other person. It's about freeing yourself. When you let go of resentment, you don't erase the past. You reclaim your present. She's right. Letting go doesn't mean pretending it didn't hurt. It means choosing not to carry the pain any longer. It means making room for something lighter, something healing. You don't have to write a long letter. You don't have to pick up the phone right away. But maybe, just maybe, you can stop reliving the moment that broke you and instead start imagining the peace that comes when you're no longer bound to it. But letting go of the past doesn't just mean emotional wounds. It also means how we choose to respond in the present, especially when our patience runs thin. So take a quiet moment. Ask yourself, who or what are you still holding on to? And what might your life feel like if you finally chose to let it go? Because sometimes we don't just carry grudges in our hearts, we carry them in our homes too. In the clutter, the boxes, the things we hold on to. Just in case. If this part of the journey felt familiar, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it, or leave a comment below. And join Golden Wise Elders as we gently lighten the load together. Golden Wise. Let's look at that. Next. There are moments when the world just feels too loud, too fast, too much. The traffic is slower than it should be. The line at the pharmacy seems to take forever. The young cashier can't figure out how to scan a coupon. And before you know it, the words come out sharper than you meant. Can you hurry up? Back in my day, people paid attention. It happens more often than we care to admit. Not because you're unkind, not because you don't care, but because something inside you, tired, overwhelmed, unseen, is speaking louder than your calm voice can keep up with. As we age, our patience can wear thin. Some of it comes from physical discomfort, aches that weren't there before, slower reflexes, changes in sleep. Some of it is emotional, the quiet frustration of feeling forgotten, or of watching a world you no longer recognize move on without you. But here's the problem. When frustration becomes our default response, it doesn't just push strangers away. It creates tension in the very relationships we still need most. It turns everyday encounters into sources of stress, and over time, it chips away at our peace. The American Psychological Association has found that chronic impatience and anger are directly linked to increased stress, higher blood pressure, and even a higher risk of stroke in older adults. It's not just a mood. It's a health risk. Barbara, a 73-year-old widow from Portland, learned that the hard way. One morning, she stopped at her neighborhood coffee shop, the same one she'd gone to every Tuesday for years. The barista, a young man who looked barely 20, mixed up her order. Instead of her usual half decaf, he handed her a full calf with sugar. Barbara snapped. In front of a full cafe, she raised her voice. "Do you even listen to your customers?" The young man's face flushed with embarrassment. He apologized, fumbled to fix the drink, and handed it back with shaking hands. Barbara took the cup and walked out, but the moment she sat in her car, she began to cry. Not because of the coffee, not because of him, but because of how quickly she had turned her frustration into blame. Later that evening, she told her daughter, "I felt ashamed. Not because of the mistake, but because of how I handled it. That's not who I want to be." That moment became a turning point. Dr. Harold Freeman, a behavioral health expert who works with aging adults, often reminds his patients of something simple. A 3-second pause can save a relationship and your heart. And he's right, because patience isn't just about being polite. It's a muscle, a practice. It's a way of staying connected to your values, even when life feels chaotic. The next time Barbara saw that same barista, she smiled. She asked how his day was going. And when he remembered her order without asking, she said, "You're doing a great job." That day, both of them left with lighter hearts. So take a breath. Think back. When was the last time you lost patience? What was really going on beneath the surface? What would it have looked like if you had paused for just a few seconds longer? Because the people we snap at, the young cashier, the slow driver, the neighbor with too many questions, they're not the real problem. Sometimes, the one we're truly frustrated with is ourselves, especially when we stop caring about how we show up in the world. When we let tiredness or loneliness or bitterness take the wheel. And sometimes, that inner heaviness doesn't just show up in how we speak, it shows up in the mirror, in the way we stop showing up for ourselves. And that often shows up in ways we don't expect. Like when we stop dressing the way we used to, when we stop brushing our hair, when we look in the mirror and hardly recognize the person looking back. Let's talk about that. Next, there comes a point for many of us when getting dressed feels optional. When brushing your hair, putting on earrings, or choosing your favorite shirt starts to feel like too much effort for a day spent mostly at home. You tell yourself, why bother? I'm not going anywhere. You slip into the same soft pajamas or oversized sweatshirt. You pass by the mirror without even glancing. At first, it feels harmless, comfortable even. But over time, this quiet neglect starts to say something much deeper. I don't matter as much anymore. And that's where the real danger lies, because how we care for ourselves on the outside often reflects how we feel on the inside. And when we stop showing up for ourselves physically, we begin to disappear emotionally. You start declining invitations. You avoid being in photos. You feel invisible, not because others don't see you, but because you've stopped seeing yourself. According to a recent study from the National Institutes of Health, older adults who maintain basic grooming habits and a sense of personal style report 35% higher life satisfaction than those who don't. It's not about fashion. It's not about impressing anyone. It's about identity, about telling yourself every morning, I still care about me. Eleanor, a retired school teacher from Phoenix, knows this feeling well. At 66, she stopped wearing makeup after she retired. No more lipstick, no earrings. Her closet stayed full, but untouched. One afternoon, as she walked past the shop window, she caught her own reflection and paused. She later said, I looked tired, but it wasn't my face, it was my spirit. That day, she went home and put on the soft blue blouse her husband had always loved. She brushed her hair. She spritzed on a little of her favorite perfume, the one she used to save for special occasions. And something shifted. She didn't suddenly look younger or different, but she felt something return. A lightness, a presence, a quiet message to herself. I'm still here. Dr. Lily Carter, a geriatric wellness coach who has worked with hundreds of seniors, says this beautifully. It's not vanity, it's self-respect. You're telling yourself, I'm still here and I'm still worth it. And you are. You are worth getting dressed for. You are worth the 5 minutes it takes to comb your hair or wear the shirt that makes you feel beautiful. Not because someone else is looking, but because you are. So ask yourself, gently, what's one small way you can show yourself care today? Maybe it's changing into real clothes after breakfast. Maybe it's wearing that scarf you've kept tucked away for years. Maybe it's standing in front of the mirror, smiling and saying out loud, you still matter, because you do. And speaking of showing up, it's not just our appearance that tells a story. Sometimes it's our surroundings, our homes, our closets, the piles of things we hold on to, even when we don't know why. Let's turn our attention to something just as important. Some things are hard to throw away. A birthday card from 20 years ago, the baby clothes your son outgrew decades back, stacks of newspapers, old receipts, broken gadgets, all tucked in drawers, closets, or boxes labeled someday. Base, it's not just clutter. To you, it's memory. It's comfort. It's proof of the life you've lived. But slowly, quietly, that comfort begins to take up more space than you intended. What once was a cozy home becomes harder to walk through. The kitchen table disappears beneath piles. The guest room becomes a storage unit. And the hallway, once filled with family footsteps, becomes an obstacle course. You tell yourself, I might need it. It reminds me of them. It's just things. It's not hurting anyone. But the truth is, it might be hurting more than you realize. According to the National Safety Council, cluttered homes increase fall risk by 28% among adults over 65. That box in the hallway, that stack of old magazines, they're not just harmless, They're hazards, and not just to your body, but to your peace of mind. Because clutter doesn't just fill up your space, it fills your thoughts. It creates overwhelm. It becomes a visual reminder of things unfinished, unresolved, unprocessed. And over time, that weight begins to settle, not in your hands, but in your spirit. George, 75, knows that feeling well. His garage was filled to the ceiling. Tools, newspapers, holiday decorations he hadn't used in a decade. He said every item reminded me of something. I couldn't let them go. Then one afternoon, his 8-year-old granddaughter tripped over a box and sprained her ankle. That night, as he sat beside her on the couch, she asked softly, "Grandpa, why do you keep all this stuff?" And for the first time, George didn't have an answer, just a quiet realization that maybe, just maybe, the things he'd kept for comfort were now keeping him from living freely in the present. Dr. Brenda Yates, a senior living consultant, says this beautifully. Letting go of things doesn't erase your past. It creates space for your future. She encourages starting small. One drawer, one shelf, one box. Ask yourself, do I use this? Does it bring me peace? If not, maybe it's time to say thank you and let it go. Letting go doesn't mean forgetting. It means making room. Room to breathe. Room to move safely. Room to welcome people in again. To share your space, not just your memories. So take a moment and look around you. What's one item you've been holding on to that you're ready to release? Maybe it's a box of clothes that no longer fit. Maybe it's a broken appliance waiting to be fixed someday. Maybe it's a dusty stack of papers that no longer speak to who you are now. Because clearing space isn't just about organizing your home. It's about clearing the emotional clutter too. And that kind of release can feel like starting fresh, no matter how old you are. Our homes may be cluttered, but so can our conversations, especially when we speak more than we listen and forget how powerful it is to simply hear and be heard. And that brings us to something else we often overlook. We all have stories to tell, moments from our youth, lessons we've learned, things we wish someone had told us when we were younger, and with age comes the desire, maybe even the responsibility, to pass those stories on. But sometimes, in our eagerness to share, we forget to listen. We begin to fill the silence before others can speak. We offer advice before someone finishes their thought. We assume we understand, and in doing so, we stop asking questions. And that's when connection begins to quietly slip away. It's not that our stories aren't valuable, they are. But when they dominate every conversation, when we speak more than we ask, when our words take up more space than our presence, the people we love may stop feeling seen, or worse, stop trying to be seen at all. Loneliness doesn't only come from being alone. It also comes from being surrounded by people yet feeling unheard, unasked about, unnoticed. The Journal of Communication published a study showing that listening, not just hearing, but truly listening, improves relationship satisfaction by over 40%. That's not just a number. That's the difference between feeling close to someone and feeling like strangers living under the same roof. Raymond, 78, started noticing this when his grandson stopped calling as often. When they did speak, Raymond would launch into stories about his time in the Navy, the jobs he'd worked, the way things were back then. He loved those conversations. He thought his grandson did too. Until one day, the boy said gently, "Grandpa, I love your stories, but I wish you asked me about mine." That one sentence stopped Raymond cold. He realized something painful. He had been trying to connect, but only on his terms. He had been sharing, but not inviting. And he'd missed out on knowing who his grandson was becoming. The next time they talked, Raymond tried something different. He started by asking, "How was your week? What's been making you smile lately?" And something beautiful happened. The conversation bloomed. There was laughter, curiosity, and a closeness he hadn't felt in a long time. Not because he talked less, but because he listened more. Dr. Naomi Elkin, an expert in family dynamics, puts it this way: listening is how we say "I love you" without using words. It's a quiet act of care. It says, "You matter. I'm here. I want to understand you." So take a moment to reflect. Who in your life might need more of your listening and a little less of your advice? Maybe it's your daughter caring more than she lets on. Maybe it's your spouse who just wants to be heard at the end of a long day. Maybe it's a grandchild waiting for space to open up. Because when we listen, really listen, we offer a gift far more valuable than words. We offer presence. We offer respect. We offer love. And that That is what keeps us truly connected. Across generations, across time, across all the things we think we've already said. Aging isn't about giving up. It isn't about fading quietly into the background or living only in memories. It's about choosing. Choosing what to carry with you and what to finally let go. In this video, we've walked through 7 habits, 7 quiet patterns that can slowly pull us away from the life we still want to live. Pushing away help, resisting change, holding on to pain, losing patience, neglecting ourselves, clinging to things, and speaking more than we listen. They're common, they're human, but most importantly, they're not permanent. You are still growing, still becoming. And you have the power to write the next chapter of your life with intention, peace, and connection. It doesn't take a grand gesture. Sometimes it starts with one small shift, letting someone help, trying something new, getting dressed just for you, listening fully to someone you love. Whatever it is, know this, you're not doing it alone. We're here, walking beside you, because growing older doesn't mean losing who you are. It means coming home to yourself, one gentle step at a time. If any part of today's message touched your heart, even just a little, give it a like. Leave a comment and tell us, which habit are you ready to work on? And subscribe to Golden Wise Elders, where growing older means growing wiser together. And if someone you love might need to hear this too, share it with them. Let's lift each other up. One story, one moment, one reminder at a time. We'll see you in the next video. Until then, take care of yourself. You matter more than you know.